The next day, I got up early, packed a small bag for the trip, and Gary came to my apartment to say that Dao's friend would be joining us in Koh Samet and staying in their apartment on the sofa. Gary had arranged for the same lady who picked us up from the airport to take us to the ferry terminal for Koh Samet. When we arrived, we walked to our apartments located just a short distance from the pier. After checking in and receiving our keys, I opened my door and found the apartment to be great. A few minutes later, Gary knocked on my door to ask if Dao's friend could stay with me since there were no sofas in the apartment. Although I was initially resistant, I offered to pay for her own apartment because the situation felt awkward. But the girl refused and said she would sleep on my floor, which I couldn't allow. So reluctantly, I let her stay in my room, even though I didn't even know her name. Gary apologized and explained that Dao had invited her, thinking she would stay in their room. The island was stunning. Our apartments were only a couple of meters from the beach, and I was amazed at the beauty of the place. We had a meal and sat on the beach. It was idyllic. However, when the night came, I felt awkward sharing a bed with someone I had just met, so to avoid discomfort, we slept on opposite sides of the bed. The girl's name was Nid. She didn't speak English, so we could hardly communicate, only through a translation app. Despite being 47, she looked about 32. She told me that she ran a restaurant until it went bust during COVID, and she had learned to give massages to make money, mainly for Thai people, mostly women, in her non-tourist area, though she tried Pattaya because she could earn more there. She mentioned that she was leaving Pattaya because she found it scary and didn't like the work practices, though who knows if that was entirely true. The next day, I went for an early walk on the beach and upon returning, found everyone awake. Gary asked me how my night had been. I admitted it felt awkward and uncomfortable sharing with a stranger. He laughed and said, "This is Thailand, not the UK. It is normal," even joking that there might be a YouTube video about me, the shyest guy in Pattaya. That day was wonderful. We swam in the sea, ate meals together, and Nid really opened up. Perhaps she felt awkward as I did at first, but as we spent time together on the beach and in the sea, she became loving and close to me. After the beach, we returned to the apartment and I went in for a shower to wash off the salt water. I was alerted by the sound of the door opening when Nid walked in with a big smile and joined me. Later, we returned to the main room and even had some aerobics a few times. Wonderful. She mentioned that she thought I didn't like her, which is why she had been quiet. That night, we went out for a meal and Gary teased me about being shy. I explained what happened and remarked, "About time." One day in Koh Samet, Gary took us for a walk through lanes and side streets until we found some apartments where he said he and Ploy had once stayed. Cue another angry outburst from Dao and hours of silence as she complained that Thai girls are naturally jealous and huffy. Back in Pattaya the next day, Nid came to my room and began hanging up her clothes, although I hadn't asked her to stay with me. I didn't mind because she was pleasant company. For the next week, she was the perfect holiday girlfriend. We did everything together, meals, shopping and beach outings, and we became inseparable. In a shopping mall one day, I asked if she had seen anything she liked, and when she mentioned that clothes were cheaper in a market, we went there. She got a couple of items that cost next to nothing, which pleasantly surprised me as I had expected her to go for expensive items. One day, a friend based in Thailand messaged me saying he had a day off and invited me out for food, beach and beers. I met him and had a great time, but when I returned, Gary, Dao and Nid were in Gary's apartment cooking a meal and having drinks, having decided on a night in. I said I wanted to go out since I didn't want to spend the night in the apartment. So the plan was for Nid to stay with Gary and Dao while I took the key with me since the key fob opened the lift and I would be locked out without it. At the last minute, Nid decided to stay in my apartment. I was okay with that, but since I had the key, she couldn't leave the room. When I left, Nid was sitting in front of the TV, looking very happy, and I told her about the bar I was planned to go to. I wanted to see a live band. Once outside, I changed my mind and went to a bar in the opposite direction, the same bar where I had been on my first night, recalling the bar girl who had been a bit of a pest. I remembered her smiling at me clearly, noticing my stress, and she waved me over, so I invited her to join me. Although she couldn't speak English, I chatted with her through a translation app until the mamasan joined us. The mamasan explained that the girl was new to the bars and ineffective because she couldn't speak English, saying that she had been in Pattaya for 3 weeks and no one had shown any interest in her. I assured her it was fine, bought them several drinks for both of them, and when the mamasan asked if I was going to bar find the girl, I replied that I couldn't since I had someone staying in my room. The mamasan then asked if I could take her another night because she hadn't been bar fined yet. There I was sitting drunk with a bar girl and watching a band when I noticed Nid coming over to me. She shouted at me in Thai, ran out of the bar and looked as though she was crying. The bar girl asked me who she was and I admitted I didn't know. Oops. I finished my drink and headed back to my apartment, questioning how Nid had known where to find me. As I thought I had the key, my mind raced as I approached the apartment. Uncertain of what I would find, and when I got back, Nid was already there. I was furious, asking her if she had left my apartment open, and we argued for a bit. I insisted that I was only talking to somebody and doing nothing wrong. She explained that she had asked Dal to look after my room when she went to the 7-Eleven, which was right beside the apartment block and nowhere near where she had found me, and then she started to cry and apologised. I went back to the bar, got very drunk, and when I returned, Nid was asleep on the couch in the living room. I went to the bed drunk and expecting trouble the next day. The following day, Gary told me that Nid had asked them to watch my room and had borrowed his key fob to operate the lift. She said she needed something from the shop, but Gary suspected she had been roaming the streets looking for me. When I woke up, Nid was lying beside me and smiling. However, that day, she packed up and left Pattaya to head home near Bangkok. I walked with her to the bus station and waved her off, feeling terrible about what I'd done to that lovely girl. I returned to the apartment and spent the day nursing a hangover and a feeling of guilt, even though I hadn't really done anything to warrant it. Later that day, Gary and Dal came to my room. Dal said that Nid was upset but understood that Western men come to Pattaya for fun with bar girls. I explained that I was only talking to someone and watching a band, and Dal laughed when I mentioned that I had paid for drinks for a girl and the mamasan. She asked if I had wanted Nid to go and I said no. She smiled and said she would sort something out. A couple of hours later, Nid was outside the hotel back from Bangkok and I had to collect her because she couldn't get in without a fob. She was so happy to be back and we had an amazing time together for the rest of my holiday. One day, I took her shopping and offered to buy her a gift, but she refused, saying there was nothing she needed. However, when we were in the mall, I bought her a couple of items, a top and a top and short set, both in the same size, though one top fitted while the other one was too small. We returned them and asked for a bigger size. The lady in the mall said there were no larger sizes in stock and offered me another top, which made me happy, though Nid looked furious. She started arguing with the lady and eventually grabbed the shorts and stormed away, explaining that the lady had tried to rip me off by giving us only a top in exchange for a returned top and shorts. She was protecting me, even though I wasn't upset. When my holiday came to an end, it was so hard to say goodbye. Nid looked very sad. She had never asked me for money, but on the last day I gave her 10,000 baht after insisting, and she accepted it with tears in her eyes. When we got home, Dal told Gary that Nid cried for the rest of the day because I had left. Looking back, I realised that I thought I was prepared for Pattaya, but I wasn't. Perhaps I shouldn't have taken more advantage of the many available women, but I had the company of a loving pretty woman who made my time in Thailand fantastic. I have stayed in touch with Nid. At first we messaged each other frequently, but now it is just the occasional message, as I didn't want to start a long distance relationship with someone 6,000 miles away, and Nid has never asked me for money. Out of all the women in Pattaya, I still find it crazy that the first girl I encountered was my friend's ex. An unbelievable coincidence. Will I go back? Definitely. They say that Thailand is addictive, and I can certainly see why. Great story there, but it's obvious to me, playing devil's advocate, Nid was obviously a freelancer, wasn't she? Because, she's just a normal girl. She's not going to come to the island and say, can I sleep with you? and she took the money at the end of the day, right? Not trying to be horrible. I'm just saying. The other thing was the other girl that he met at the bar, when the mamasan came across and said, oh, you know, she's had no takers, nobody's interested because she doesn't speak English. Well, you know, if you've been here before, she's a good-looking girl. She doesn't even need to speak English. She doesn't even need to speak. You know, as long as she understands a bit of sign language, like come this way, she'd have been taken out of the bar. It sounded like a typical kind of setup with the mamasan and the girl trying to play on somebody maybe he's a little bit naive on his first trip or something like that. But I certainly don't believe the girl had never been out with anybody else. But that's just me. Okay, guys, thanks for listening again.